Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to By the Bay, here for another episode, and today we have Ryan O'Connell from How to ADU as our guest. I met Ryan through TikTok. He's TikTok famous. He's got 55,000 followers on TikTok, and he's on YouTube, and he's on Instagram, and he's everywhere you can find him. And he is based out of Napa, California, and his expertise is in how to help homeowners make ADUs, and we're going to talk about what accessory dwelling units are. And without further ado, Ryan, tell us about you and how you got here.
Thank you, Dan. It's so nice to be here. I got here by TikTok. No, I'm still getting used to telling people I'm a TikToker.
You're TikTok famous.
That's it. It's crazy. It's crazy what people will be willing to watch in a pandemic. But I'm a wine guy originally, which is why we meet up in wine country. But I started seeing that there was a big housing shortage in California. And a lot of my team members, they were moving farther and farther away, especially the locals. And I was like, what's going on? And so I kind of dove into the research and realized there's a big housing shortage. There's a lot being done to help solve that problem from a legal point of view, like giving homeowners the ability to build things like ADUs.
Big zoning changes from the state, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Like suddenly you have a lot more rights than you used to. But it was still really hard to learn about them. And I was like, this is my in. So I still drink a lot of wine, but I got out of the industry and started teaching people how to build ADUs and what they can do to develop more housing or housing security for themselves, maybe a family member, maybe rental income, that kind of thing.
Right, so in general terms, and basically, assume I know nothing about what ADU is. I hear that term thrown around a bunch. What is an accessory dwelling unit? What is an ADU?
Yeah, it's a house in your backyard or converting part of your house into an apartment. And it's a wonky permitting term that they intentionally chose because it doesn't mean much. And that way it gets away from all the colloquial language like, granny flat, in-law suite, and it defines this legal thing that's very special because it skips a lot of city rules. So if you live in a city that doesn't allow a lot, or if you live in a very restrictive HOA, this special little term, accessory dwelling unit, escapes a lot of those restrictions while still being responsible and developing in a very specific, safe way for the community.
Because you're not taking a single family residence and turning it into a duplex, which would mean two connected single family residence with like a common wall. This is something different, but still has essentially two households in the same parcel.
Yeah. And actually, strictly speaking, you could do a bump out, an attached ADU, and it looks just like a duplex, but on a piece of paper at the planning department, it's not a duplex.
Understood.
And so it doesn't scare everybody. You don't say the big multifamily word that sends homeowners running.
High density housing.
That's it. That's it. It doesn't have that kind of effect on the neighboring property values because it's just a separate thing. It's its own thing. And it has different lending implications. It has different construction implications. I don't want to get into the boring part, but it's a very special little carve out that lets homeowners do something that we used to do all the time, right? Like it's not, sometimes I hear people say, we're rediscovering multifamily, multi-generational housing. I'm like, this is an old concept. And a lot of people have been doing it the whole time, but this gives you a legal way to get it done.
So what does it look like in your neighborhood, in mine? Where do they show up? Is it only I think there's some idea of it's only rural properties that have these kind of accessory dwellings. Where are your clients building these? Where do they exist?
Yeah, this is interesting because they're so versatile that legal framework is set up to make it very versatile. And so I see them in a lot of very different use cases, but rural is great because the lot might be big and you don't have somebody literally in your backyard. That said, if you live in an urban environment like Berkeley or Oakland, or you kind of used to having neighbors right up to the edge of your property. So it's not that big a deal to you to put in a tasteful little 700 square foot unit in the backyard. And so I see it in both urban and rural contexts. What I would say is right now, they're still expensive to build and permit. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of people, it only pencils for the people who are building for themselves or a family member, most commonly. Now, you're starting to see rental kind of buy and hold rental investors go, okay, wait, there are some properties where this makes a lot of sense, and they're developing their little models and going like, okay, I know exactly what kind of property I like for this. But that's maybe 20% of the people I work with. 80% are building for themselves or a family member. Sometimes it's a child coming back from college and can't afford California anymore. Sometimes it's a parent who's aging and doesn't need a 3-story house that's not very livable for their lifestyle today. And sometimes it's both. It's that sandwich generation that's facing both and trying to figure out, how do I turn my one property that's a single family residence into a multi-generational setup that serves all of us, and then we can like rotate through at different points in life.
And still have autonomy and privacy, and not just have a big house with a bunch of people living in it, because these have separate kitchens and they have got separate bathrooms, and they're kind of a standalone thing that's nearby, but totally self-sufficient.
Nailed it, yeah.
Right. So understanding the different laws and codes and regulations and setbacks and all these other things that you have to do to like actually build these things, that's a lot for like a homeowner to take on, because they got day jobs, they've got other things that they're doing. So what's the solution that you're providing? Help me understand, like, how do you help a homeowner look at and assess their property and go, this is my objective and here's how I can achieve it?
So you've touched on a couple really big challenges, which one is no homeowner is a developer, right? Maybe you've done like a remodel or something, but it's completely different to have to go get financing lined up on a project that you don't know exactly how it'll turn out. Get the plans done, even though you don't know exactly what you can afford, and then get bids from builders, even though you don't know exactly what you're doing yet.
Right.
And so to iterate between those, super hard. Most people are like, how is this not an off-the-shelf thing yet?
Sure.
So that's one big challenge. And then the other one is the rules. They vary from place to place. There's a lot of nuance, even though there's these streamlined state rules, there's a lot of local enforcement.
Right.
So I cracked in and thought that I would just be helping individual homeowners. And what I found is I was answering the same questions over and over. And I said, I gotta put this on YouTube, TikTok. And the next thing I knew, that people were coming back and saying, thank you so much, you've changed my project.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't know you. No, I watched I watched every video.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing that I'm very proud and kind of grateful that I can offer is you go learn for free. Go on the YouTube channel, go on TikTok, go on the blog, How to ADU. And it's all there. And it's the most common questions. 90% of the people I help will hopefully never have to meet me in person. Bear with my long-winded stories. But then if you need a little extra help, if you run into a city that seems like it doesn't know as much as you do, which is very, that happens.
Sure.
Cities have a lot to keep up with. Then you can book me. You can call me for an hour, somebody on my team, and we can work through a problem with you.
Got it.
And if you live in a city that's really being mean, we like fighting sometimes.
So you'll get involved and talk to the planners and help them understand what the laws look like and make sure that the property rights of the homeowner are being recognized and honored, so they can use the property how they want to.
Yeah. And I like to position it as, cities are all trying to do one thing, city staff just doing a job. And a lot of the time they're kind of being told to do something that they don't want to do.
Right.
And then there's the state agency, the HCD, and they're in charge of enforcing, but they're very busy. So you need to kind of know how to identify an issue at the city level and talk to the right manager in just the right way so that they kind of have a conversation. It's very corporate.
Right.
but I know I have the benefit of knowing all these people now, and so and kind of knowing where the forms are and all that. So I do that too.
And so, like, what areas are you really focused on? Because you've been doing this for a while, so you're kind of having existing relationships and so on. So, kind of walk us through, like, where are people building these? Where are you finding success in terms of geography and where it like makes sense for people to be doing it?
Yeah, it's largely correlated with where people live. So most of these projects are still in SoCal because that's where the population is. There's a lot of affluence in the Bay Area and Los Angeles City and population, and so that's where the projects are getting done. But interest is everywhere. No matter how small a jurisdiction is, people get how they can use their backyard to house a family member or to create some rental income. And so it's a vague answer, but I'm like, most of the clients are like literally LA.
Okay.
Having said that, everybody wants to do it. And this month, my biggest focus has been this $40,000 grant that the state has made available through CalHFA, because that's a big amount of money,
yeah,
right?
That's a lot.
And so if somebody hears $40,000, then they suddenly go, wait a second, that crazy bid that I got to convert my garage, that's not so crazy anymore. 40 might make the whole project pencil, might make it work for my family.
Sure.
And so getting that information out there has been so critical because the grant's been available since last September, a year now.
Has it been utilized?
That's the thing. And all the agencies all report on this stuff, but you have to sit through some long meetings. In the first 9 months of the grant, I think they had 18 grant reservations for the entire state of California.
So walk it back. So I know a little bit about this $40,000 grant because I've watched your TikToks about it, and I think it was your most popular video is like 300,000 views about this. So what is it?
Yeah.
How do people qualify? Are there income restrictions? Kind of give us the top 5 bullet points that we need to know about this.
Number 1, it is complicated and evolving. So selfishly, go subscribe to the channel, all that stuff, because I will update as it goes. Number 2, it's $40,000 for homeowners. There's some income eligibility maximums, but they're very generous, and they're for individuals, not household.
Okay.
There's no requirements once it's built, so no deed restriction, no affordability requirements. It is $40,000 for pre-construction costs. So you can use it for permits, you can use it for plans, designs.
Paying your architects, paying how to ADU, absolutely.
And then you can use it to buy down points, buy down interest and other non-recurring closing costs. So you can always use the full 40. And up until recently, it was very hard to actually get the qualification because you had to work with a pre-approved lender from CalHFA, and they were almost all requiring refinances. But that just changed.
Wait, so before you had to be refinancing your existing mortgage, you already own the home.
Yeah, and that wasn't a requirement from CalHFA, but the lenders that were participating almost all required it.
Understood, to get access to the free $40,000. But now you're saying you can do it as a standalone, on a standalone basis.
You could bring cash, you could get any kind of financing you want from outside of their stable of lenders.
Okay.
So if you know a guy, then that's all available, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is, and this is where it got super wonky. In the early interviews with CalHFA, I was like, why is it only construction style loans? And they said, well, that's not our requirement. CalHFA is just saying we want a managed escrow fund. Now, the way that all of our lenders offer that is a construction or renovation loan. So they've ended up finding a partner institution, HPP Cares, that's a nonprofit that it was willing to do controlled fund management with a third party and operate statewide. And that little tweak, very wonky back office politics, the day I heard that, I was like, that changes everything.
Right.
And sure enough, in the 2 weeks since they announced that, they've gotten 900 applications through, which is at 40,000 a pop, it's like $30 million, right? So we're deploying real money now, and that's so exciting.
So a couple of follow-up questions to that. Where's the money coming from? Where's the source? The state is funding this, and where's that coming from, like the original source? And number 2, follow-up question is, can you walk us through an example, like here's what a project's gonna cost, X amount of square feet, roughly this amount of cost for total construction, then you're gonna get your $40,000 grant, and kind of walk me through that whole picture.
You started with an easy question, but then that's my least favorite question.
Okay.
We'll do both. The grant money is coming from the state. Newsom signed something or signed a budget, or I forget how it works, back in September last year, that basically took something like, I think it was called like the California Rescue Package, or one of those wonderfully named acronyms, and just allocated $100 million to ADU development through CalHFA. And then there's another process where they said, okay, it'll be $25,000 per grant. And then in January, they upped it to $40,000. So there's like
some building legislation.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So we have a $100 million pool initially. You're saying they're scheduled to deploy about 30 of that. So we're only 30% of the way through. And that probably is some type of mechanism to replenish that pool if they're finding success and going from there. And it probably has to do with the fact that they just changed the zoning law, which gave the state basically said, any local, county, city jurisdiction, you can't limit, you can't tell the homeowners they can't build an ADU, right? That's
you cannot prohibit these things anymore.
So if they're going to make that blanket policy, they've kind of got to back it up with some type of, now we're going to help you, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, actually build this to create this multi-generational solution so grandma, mom, whoever can come live on your property and age there. Makes
You
a lot of
understand
sense.
everything,
Totally.
yeah.
Okay.
And
so
they kind of come back and they go, wait, why aren't these getting built in
Right.
neighborhoods that need it the most? And you go, well, they're still really expensive, and the city charges $20,000 in
permitting and before you even break ground,
Yeah.
right? Water connection fees and fee analysis fees and all those things. Okay. So walk us through like pre-construction. You think ballparks, of course. If you need more in-depth information, you call Ryan O'Connell, How to ADU, find him online, and he can walk you through this in more detail. But walk through the basics: pre-construction, total construction costs, all those other things of doing one of these.
And so I'll give a plug for locals too. In Sonoma County and Napa County, you have the Napa-Sonoma ADU Center. It is a nonprofit resource that does a lot of the same things I charge money for. So like, go check out the free version first. And they're very localized and well connected with the local jurisdiction, so makes a lot of sense to go there. And they'll have workbooks that walk you through these exact things for a more regional focus. But having said that, roughly, I'd expect these projects tend to cost 6 figures. In the North Bay, it's rare to see them come in cheaper all in than $200,000, even for conversions. That breakdown is probably going to vary a lot. If you're converting a structure, you could usually work with a good design builder, right? And like, you don't need a full-fledged architect on any of these. Sometimes it benefits, but you don't need it. Right. Especially for a conversion, like a good design builder is going to look at the existing structure, be able to document the existing conditions and come up with the best plan. If you do get an all the bells and whistles architect, like my favorite architects in the Bay Area who specialize in this, can still finish for around $20,000 with including permit processing.
Okay.
So that gives you a ballpark, right? Then the construction costs are the bulk of this, right? And then permits and fees, let's say that it varies a lot, but people aren't used to this. Your fees start coming in from like 17 different places. So if you go and ask the planning department, how much is the fee? They're like, oh, we waived the ADU fees. It's very common. And you're like, great, it's free.
Awesome.
And they're like, oh no, we just waived our fees.
Right.
The building inspector still charges something, that's nominal, but then the water connection and like the PG&E.
PG&E's
like,
got to run out there and put in a separate meter and so on and so forth.
It's, oh, you're converting, but you're actually demolishing and then rebuilding. There's a demolition permit. Oh, there's a tree removal. Oh, So it's very common for the fees to end up in the thousands. I'd say I don't blink at 6,000 for projects in the Bay Area. If it gets up to like 16, I just check the line items. And if it gets past that, I have strongly worded letters that I resort to.
Right, because it shouldn't be cost prohibitive because you have to do some traffic mitigation park fee or whatever it is, right?
Exactly. And under a certain size, you actually get to skip a lot of what are called mitigation fees. Right. The law calls them impact fees. Right. Another law calls them mitigation fees. It's hard to identify them, but they can often be a $12,000 fee and it's not clear why they're being levied on homeowners. These are designed for big apartment developments.
Right.
And so,
yeah, the interesting thing is, you have these fees in place to say, oh, we're adding additional people in the neighborhood, which is additional wear and tear on the infrastructure and all these other things. So there has to be some type of cost offset. Otherwise, it's not fair. Totally makes sense. I think that in a climate where there is a housing shortage, especially in places like where we are in Petaluma, which has an urban growth boundary, and there's just limits to what you can actually do, and we have a population that continues to grow and not enough housing, not enough affordable housing. That we've got to have some common sense here and figure out a way to make this as feasible as possible. So the $40,000 grant is phenomenal that it can basically take care of architect, design, consultant fees, any type of non-recurring costs, all the other things. And then you get into the construction thing. Now that is a whole other topic because commodity prices and inflation and cost of production and the COVID shutdown impacting supply chains. So kind of what are you seeing in your scale of construction? Like what you see, obviously not swinging the hammer yourself, but like when you're consulting on these projects, what does that look like on a per square foot basis? Is there a range that you advise?
It's very hard to talk about per square foot because especially on the smaller ones, like let's say you build 450 square feet, but it has a full kitchen and bathroom.
It's very expensive
and
per square
trenching,
foot.
utilities. It's like a nightmare. Don't even do the division because you'll hate yourself. I'll tell you the absolute cheapest ADU I've seen in Santa Rosa.
Okay.
It was my favorite architect, Inspired ADUs. They did it for free because it was a nonprofit, and it was a garage conversion where everything was right? Like they got to keep the walls, the roof. It was perfect. And then a lot of materials and labor were donated because it was a nonprofit, the living room. That project still came out 6 figures. So even with all that stuff donated and everything you could save, they still came out around $100 and some thousand.
Okay.
So that's kind of the floor in my estimation in the North Bay. If you can make out a good project that suits your needs, weigh it out against what else you would do with that money, not some preconceived notion of what things should cost. So if you're trying to think, where am I going to put my aging parent that they're well taken care of, that facility is going to cost more than the monthly payments on this ADU development.
Right. And
so that's what you got to compare it to. If you're housing a family member, you go, what is the rent that they would pay? Oh, it's $3,000 for a 2-bedroom, and okay, well, you're going to be fine. Like this is cheaper than that,
right.
and you're building equity on your property. If you actually look at the sticker price, I mean, honestly, I've seen 750 square feet come in at like $250,000, and like that hurts, right? You're like, that's
because you're building a small house, and like you said, if you've got a full kitchen and bath, and I mean that's the same thing. Like, and there's just kind of minimums that you have to pay, and it still has the same electrical and water connection and sewer connection that all has to be put together if that doesn't already exist, and those kind of fixed costs in a way build up.
That's it, and that's one of the conversations that I was having the most, and that I wanted to get on the internet first, because people just don't expect the sticker price, and so getting that information out there sets people's expectations, and they go, okay, this is like a marathon project. I need to save up some money. I need to have a real plan. I need to know what I'm doing with it. It's not like a little kitchen remodel.
Right. Yeah, for sure. No, that's super fascinating. So $40,000 grant program. We kind of know basically the rough cost of doing one of these. Obviously, for each specific person, they'd want to get a design put together and some type of estimate before they started breaking ground and spending money. What advice can you give someone who's thinking about this? Maybe they own a piece of property trying to maximize its potential. Like, what's the one thing that they should know before really embarking on this journey?
Yeah, I borrow from a friend who calls himself That ADU Guy on YouTube. Become a local planning expert. It pays off. And so start with the free resource, like you're paying for it already with your taxes. Go to the planning department and just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Don't take everything they say as Bible. Like, you might come back and correct them on some things.
Sure.
But find out what they think and find out the early steps that way, because it's free. You'll get a gauge for if they have some experience yet or not. They might know some other people who've gone through it that you can then talk to in your neighborhood. The regional help is the one thing that I still can't offer very expertly, right? Like so I really encourage you, find a buddy locally who can get your project moving forward. And the planning department usually has somebody who works there who's friendly. And if you can't find that person, that's okay. Then go Google, go find me, go find other resources.
Sure, yeah.
And then the next step where you start paying money is find a good builder, find a good designer. One of those two is going to be your portal, your first point of contact through this.
Are there any like turnkey solutions for this? Because like I'm imagining trying to do this while having kids and business and all this other stuff, and it sounds like a really cool thing to be able to do. But like, is there anyone who's doing this? Like, tell us what you want to do in your project. We're gonna do the research for you and kind of tell you what it's gonna cost.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, one of my sponsors on the YouTube channel is Realm, and that's exactly what they do. They'll help you figure out your first steps on the project and then introduce you to designers and GCs and get multiple bids, help you compare those because it's hard to read those if you're not used to it, and do all that for you. And there's other firms that kind of tackle A to Z in different ways. There's a lot of modular options now that, because they're already designed, they're kind of built off site to the same standards as a house. They come in on a crane one day, so it's a bit of a miracle. Those options are very A to Z, and they tend to handle everything at that one point of contact. And then there's a lot of consultants and people who will just help you through the process wherever your team needs a little filling in. And so everything under the sun exists. It's a market that's trying to organize itself a bit.
So if you're a homeowner looking for that solution, you can go to your website
Yeah.
and kind of you have a list of all those different providers,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you can connect people and make sure that they're getting the advice that they need and not. I mean, it's going to cost them money, but they're not wasting money.
Exactly. And like some of these, like I love my sponsors. They're not, each one isn't for everybody.
Sure.
And so that's why I try to do really transparent videos where I talk to their customers so you can see a real person and go, oh, that's exactly the situation I'm in. Or I don't believe in their priorities at all. Like that's, and then you kind of can self-identify. Whereas if you talk to companies, you kind of never really know what the spiel is, right?
Right.
But so I set it all up like that, very transparently. You talk to, you listen to videos with real people and you kind of figure out what's best for your project. And yeah, hopefully there's a way for every homeowner to take advantage of what's being made available. And it's not just ADUs, right? A lot of the advice I give is not an ADU for you. And so an example of that is somebody will say, you know, I've got this medical emergency in my family. I really just need a caretaker on the property tomorrow. And the ADU is going to take forever. It's compared to what you need.
Right.
There's like a just months timeline, not tomorrow. You could get an Airstream, and there's some trailer laws in your county or in your city. You could do this, you could do that, and it's about finding the right solution for your problem, right? And it's a lot of those conversations.
Cool. It's a complex situation, right? Like housing in general is difficult. Multi-generational housing, finding solutions to house people, especially aging parents and children, maybe those rebound kids that are coming back from college, kind of trying to get their bearings. It's an issue that needs to be solved. And it's amazing that there's a resource, kind of here locally in the Bay Area to reach out. So why don't you drop your socials one more time and just make sure everyone knows where to reach you. And thanks for coming on the show. And it's really cool that we were able to connect and responding to my random message to check it out.
I love it. It's so howtoadu.com, howtoadu on all these social platforms, and just don't rely just on me either. Go do your research. It's a big project, so study up and get a feel for it. And whenever you need help, reach out. I answer my emails. I'm happy to see projects going up.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, and we'll have to get together, get some wine sometime.
Yeah, thanks,
cool.
Dan.
Right on. Appreciate it.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.